Laure Rosauer, and I am here today with Doug Schwartz. You may have seen some other videos. We are interviewing every one of the candidates that are running for a supervisor position on our town board in the election this spring. We will be covering a myriad of topics, and they've all been answering the same set of questions. And we hope this information is going to be very useful to you as you learn about the candidates that are interested in serving on our board. Today, I'm joined by Doug Schwartz. Doug, could you please take a minute and introduce yourself and also share what drove you to want to run again to be on the town board?
Sure, Laurie. First off, I've lived in the area since 1956, so that goes back quite a bit. I attended St. Thomas Aquinas Grade School, went to Waterford Union High School, went to United Technical Institute for Electronics. After that, I attended some labor classes through the UAW, also some management classes. Went through EMT classes, firefighting classes, and so on. I've been married for almost 55 years. I have 4 children, 12 grandchildren, and now 2 great-grandchildren. I worked at AMC, or American Motors in Kenosha. There I was in a labor union, and after that they asked me to be on supervision, and that's where I took my labor classes. After getting laid off there, I went to Continental Can in Burlington as just a regular labor worker, and then I went to become a union steward, and that's where I went to the UAW classes to be a union steward. After that, I worked at Lauderdale Lakes Marina, where I ran the parts and service department, so I was involved with smaller things, but a lot of one-on-one with the customers. And my last part was I worked at Generac Power Systems, where I retired from, and then they asked me to come back, so I worked an extra 10 years part-time. So now I am completely retired, so I actually have time to devote to it. The reason I'm running for the board is, number one, I've always believed in giving back to the community, whether it's been on the fire department, on the school boards, on the town board. Back in the 90s, we had a water management committee only, not a district like we have now, and I was on that. I'm on the police committee, so that's why I've been involved with it, and I feel being on the board for 3 years, I have a lot to bring back to it. I don't come in with any predetermined things. I believe the board members should do their due diligence to look at what they need to do. An example of that is in May we had an opening for fill the town supervisor position and committees. And from what I heard, none of the supervisors looked at the resumes. They had one person make recommendations and they voted on it. Well, you can't really vote unless you do your due diligence. What they should have done actually was interview the people. That hasn't happened. And there needs to be, I hate to use the word transparency, but transparency. And I'll use just at the planning board this last week. They talked about some pier permits, and then afterwards somebody wanted to say something and they were told, we'll take it offline. Well, they met in the supervisor's office between the planning board and town board, and all of a sudden during the town board meeting, they're talking, well, the boat lifts are in the way and this and that. Well, that should have been part of the public. It shouldn't have been in private. We need to be more public about this. We need to have the people in the town know what's going on. Also, I would like to see us have a strategic plan. Right now, we don't. We are, we're going from year to year, and we need something in there. What do the people in the community want? Do you want it status quo for the next 10 years? I'm fine with that. Do you want to move it along where you want to see development? I'm fine with that too, but what does the community want?
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
So you've touched on some of your public service commitments along the way. What do you see as your expertise and experience that would make you a valuable leader on the town board?
Well, I was on the Waterford Fire and Rescue for 40 years. In fact, the building right outside there is, I spent a lot of time in that building. At that time they had a chairman that ran the department, had nothing to do with the fire scenes, but just to do with the budgets and that. I was chairman for the department for several years. I was a rescue captain, a training officer, and a safety officer. And then I also was on the Racine County Fire Investigation Task Force for several years. Also, I had 6 years on the Waterford Grade School, where I was the board clerk and ended up being the president after a person that was president had a stroke. I moved up to that. Right now, I have in my 9th year on the Waterford Union High School board. I am the clerk right now. I have served also as the treasurer at one point. Obviously, I was on the town board for 3 years, so all that gives me some knowledge on what to do. When I was on the town board, I believe in trying to get something done. On the grade school, high school boards, we have informational items 1 month, action items the next. At the town, we have informational items, and it's still informational items 6 months later. We don't get stuff done. Now, when I was on there, I was instrumental in getting the new roof on the town hall, and it was covered mostly by insurance, which saved the town a lot of money. The DPW wanted a backup generator, and they hemmed and hawed, and I said, I've got some connections working at Generac, let's move ahead, and we got that. Talking to some of the DPW workers, instead of having another big dump and plow truck, why not get a smaller one, especially like for Waterford Woods and that. So I was instrumental in that. So at least I got some things done. That's why we need to move forward on that.
Excellent, well, thank you.
And like I said, I've been involved in the community for years, growing up here. Sad to say, I remember when I was in grade school, my dad used to take me to the town board meetings.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, I remember a long time ago, and then they were looking something up when I was on the board, and Tina brought something up, and she says, there's stuff in here from the 1980s that you were making motions. So yeah.
Well, you do have a rich history in this community.
Thank you.
So what specific issues do you personally see that need to be addressed within the town? And if you do see some, what solutions would you present to address them?
Okay. I have several in no particular order. One, we need the county to finish our 2050 plan. Right now, we're still under our 2030 plan. I know Dale has worked with them for at least 3 years, and it gets pushed down every year, so hopefully we will get it done. We need a strategic plan for the town, something that we haven't had. And like I had said earlier, what do the members in the town want? We need to address the issues that they bring up. One of the things I'd like to do is hold listening sessions. On the grade school board and on the high school board, I've had listening sessions. A few were well attended, a few were, I've only had a couple people. But you'd be surprised what you find out, whether it's from employees in the district, whether it's just the residents. They bring up stuff that you have never heard of. I should have probably done that in my first 3 years, and I didn't. Of course, the 1 year we had a lot going on, as you know. But I would like to bring that back, especially for the town. What do the residents want? Like I said, I'm happy the way it is, and you hear people say, oh, I like the town the way it is, we don't want it to move. You have other people say, we need development. Obviously, for taxes and that, we do. If we don't have development, what's the plans for it? So we need to start addressing this. Two, I brought up last year, and everybody thought it was great, you have a part-time town administrator. He would help run the town, take some of the work off the clerks. And I think if we would have had a town administrator, we would probably have had the overruns that we did on Beyond the Park, because he would have been overseeing it. Plus, he could help with the budget, see where we're wrong, and what kind of grants are out there. Because there's a lot of grants I'm sure that we aren't getting. And I'm not saying a full-time administrator, but a part-time administrator. And people have said, where are you going to find somebody to work part-time? Simple, just like they did at Generac, somebody that's retired. What a great job. He worked a couple days a week, bring all the knowledge that he has into the town. Three, we need a 5 or 10 year plan for road improvements. Right now, we go out every spring, and when I was on the board, we drove around, and these were the roads that the superintendent said we should do, and then we said whether we should or not. We need a plan. We just don't go out that year. The other thing is, how are you going to finance it? Obviously, the town, we can only finance around $275,000 a year. Look at possibly having a bond issue. I don't know all the particulars about bond issues. From what I've been told, you can have them. Right now, the town has $1 million loan, and I believe we're paying 5.25%. Well, if you go for a municipal bond issue, you can get that a lot less. And I use the high school as an example. With the referendum last year, we had a $14 million first bond issue, and we had 7 different companies bid on it. And that means they're fighting to give you the lowest rate. So you might, instead of 5.25, you might get it for 3 or under. Great thing to do. Look at the town equipment. Do we need all the equipment we have? Maybe we should get rid of some. From what I heard, our new town DPW superintendent is starting to do that. Have a schedule for replacement. Do we want to run them till the wheels fall off? If we do, great. If not, have a plan. Like every 10 years, maybe we replace this truck. Every 10 years, we replace the front end loader. But let's start having a plan there, not like, and I'll use our former DPW, comes in November or December to the town board meeting and says, we need to buy a new dump truck. Well, you don't spring it on them, you have to have a plan. And we don't right now. Another thing would be looking at forming an industrial park. One way to start getting more taxes is having an industrial park. You know, there again, it would be up to the people. I would think a great place would be possibly 83 and 0, very close to I-43. Would we maybe have to put in a well sewer? I don't know. Could we tap into McQuanigo? Maybe we could buy services from them, but we're right by the I-43 corridor. You look at McQuanigo, look at how their industrial parks is built up. Be a great way that if the people want to keep our rural setting, we could still be bringing more money into the town. Another thing would be looking at repairing our DPW building. When I got on 3 years ago, I heard our DPW building is in need of work. The bottom of the walls, you can move in and out. They had problems with the overhead doors. When they got overhead door company came to fix them, they said, you know, the wall between the two doors moves. You know, it was brought up to our former DPW person, which I hate to throw under the bus, but he said, oh, I've tried getting estimates, but it's on a, you know, per day, per hour, you know. Well, there again, we've kicked it down the road now 4 years. This needs to be addressed. It's not going to get any better. Michigan Station 2, the road on the top there, if you look at it, it sort of waves at you. That should be addressed. It hasn't been. These are things we need to do. Obviously, with our new DPW superintendent, I think a lot of them are going to be addressed, but it's the town's way of just kicking the can down the road.
Very good. Well, thank you. You've got quite a good array of suggestions.
I got some more on the next page. Sorry. Forgot all about it. Work on the border agreement. We could go into that further, a little further on. You know, I think I've mentioned already. Have a strategic plan for the town. 5, 10, 15 years. What do we see our town? You know, I might not be around in 10 or 15 years, but I would like to see the town have a plan finally. Not, you know, like I said, I've grown up here, and it's a year-by-year basis. We need something to do that. Improve communication with the residents. I heard at the last town board meeting we're going to have a Facebook account. Great. Maybe we should have a flyer. I know the village sends something out every quarter or every 6 months. What's going on? Let the people know. We need more input from the people, and we aren't having that. And the last thing would be work with the village. What can we combine services on? You know, maybe we can have a joint police department. I know right now the two DPWs work well together. Maybe we can expand on that. What can we do to keep working this ahead?
Okay. Now, do you have anything else?
No, nothing else.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. What do you believe that the town has an adequate operating budget? And if not, what would you propose to modify it?
Well, unfortunately, our budget is controlled by the state. We can only raise so much for, I believe it's new buildings. So there again, part-time administrator could help us with that. Having a bond issue for roads would help us on that, because that would be, instead of just budgeting our $275 a year for roads, we could budget more. Let's say we take out a $5 million bond issue. That would be spread out over X amount of years to pay back. Number one, we would get at a very low interest rate, and you could add that onto the taxes.
Excellent. All right, thank you. So you mentioned the cooperative boundary agreement.
Yes, I did.
You know,
I have a lot of time invested in that.
So, you know, for the purposes of someone's reading, watching this interview, and this is the first one they're seeing, it's my understanding in 2023, you and Supervisor Corky and Tom were all appointed to serve on a committee,
Yes.
along with 2 representatives from the village, to develop a cooperative boundary plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also my understanding that you worked tirelessly on this for 2 years.
We probably met at least once a week, probably 2 to 4 hours every meeting. We also had some public meetings at the high school to inform people where we were at. We did have the hearing, and unfortunately, the village voted for it, and the town voted it down. Did most of the boxes, I think, were checked. Were there a few that maybe we could have modified? Probably. I would like to go forward to that. the people that had some issues, it's nice to raise the issue, but tell me how you're gonna adjust it. What, oh, this is wrong. Okay, great. What can we do to make it right? There was a lot in it for the town, and people disagree with me, and I said, think of it this way. Interest rates dropped to 2%. And all of a sudden, we know the farmers are getting older, their families are looking at, like the DeGraves, let's cash out. DeGraves property was probably worth less than $1 million on the tax rolls. Well, they got what, 2.4 or 2.6 for it. Great for the family. And that's in my backyard, unfortunately not great for me. But all of a sudden they say, interest rates drop, developers go, oh, look at this land. We're gonna start developing it. They buy it from the farmers, they ask the village, we wanna be annexed in. Well, we can't stop it as a town. We've learned that with the Graves, that we can maybe talk to them, but they don't have to listen. And there we go. We could go right up 164, and they couldn't stop us. We could go out 83. We couldn't stop it. At least with the border agreement, there was a thing. This is how far you go. That's it. That means the town can plan for their future, because we know the village won't go any further than that. One of the unique things in that agreement was most of them, and it was originally 50 years, which that's negotiable. After 50 years, most of them, that the gentleman at the state said, it would automatically, the land would go into the village. This one wasn't. If it wasn't in the village, it would stay in the town. So it brought a lot to the table. Like I said, there were a few issues. I know one of the supervisors brought up some issues, and he had some good points. That's why I said, I think we need to sit down and work with him and some of the other, there was at least 3 people that had issues. What can we do to make it so everybody's happy?
Okay.
Talking with the village a little bit yesterday during the police committee, they are still on board, which was good for me to hear. In fact, one of the gentlemen, I believe he was a supervisor here, said, really, there's not much in it for the village, but I voted for it, just for one Waterford. Great to hear.
Well, I appreciate that. So your position is clearly that we need to revisit this and move forward. That's.
There were a few issues, like I said, it checked most of the boxes. There were a few, when you listen, there wasn't that many. I think we can make it, we can go forward with it. Whether it was from 50 years, I know we dropped it to 40, but maybe 25 years. And there again, I think what a lot of people didn't realize is, even though the agreement was 40 years, if both municipalities agreed to it, you could change it. There was a board that was going to be set up through there that would meet at least 3 times a year to discuss issues. So it was sort of starting to promote the one Waterford. And let's face it, most people move into the area, don't know whether they're in the town or village. My neighbor's been there for 10 years, and he looks at me and he goes, are we in the village or the town? No. If you have a 4 or 5 digit house number, you're in the town. Oh, I didn't know that. So that's the problem.
I found out myself personally by going to the dump. So that's where you find out. I went to the village dump first, and then I located the town dump, which is, by the way, a wonderful service in this community.
Yes, it is, and I commend the guys that work up there.
Yeah. Let's move on now. What is your stance on the delivery of policing services in Waterford?
Good question. As you know, I'm on the police committee. If I had my way, we would have had a chief by the end of June. We dragged our feet, and I'm not going to throw anybody on our bus, but we should have moved quicker. I was glad to see we finally did get a chief towards the end of September. We have hired some people. There was a first draft, or 2 drafts now, of an agreement for forming a joint department. I think most people seem to want a joint department. The village had their meeting yesterday. We didn't meet with them. Some of our members were in the audience. They made a motion at the end of their meeting that we sit down and have a joint meeting again. I think there's a few issues. How much is their cost going to be in that? But I can see where there would be a benefit to having a joint department. Granted, you'd probably have to rehire everybody, because it would be then run by a commission. The village wouldn't be in charge, the town wouldn't be in charge. It would be the police commission is in charge. They would do their payroll, they would be in charge of everything. So, in the agreement that they shared, it did spell that out, which was good, but it's only the second draft. There's a long ways to go yet. I am hoping right now we have a contract for village services until June 30th of this year. I'm hoping before that time that we have an agreement in place for a joint department.
Excellent. Okay, very good. So you're in support of having a joint police department and keeping our local force.
Yes.
Good. So you just touched on the village. What is your opinion of our current working relationship with the village, and do you see any opportunity or need for change?
The village does have a new village president now. I was on the board agreement actually with both Adam Jaski and Don Houston, who was the former, and I think there is a great opportunity, especially Adam wants to move ahead. He would like to see what services we could share. You know, like I said, possibly police clerk, court clerk. We could have, instead of the town having a judge and the village having a judge, we could have one judge. That's just one of the things. What else can we share? Right now, I don't know, but I'm open to it. You know, a thing I found out is the old station, fire station is the villages again. Maybe that would be a great place for a police department rather than at the town. Wherever it's going to be, if they keep it up at the town, they would end up leasing that spot from either the town or the sanitary district. I believe the sanitary district is the one that owns the building. You know, could they move there? Yes. Could they move it somewhere else? Yes, they could buy their own property. But it would be something that we could work on. And for years, the police department actually was across the street.
Oh, okay.
You know, there again, history, going back into when I first joined the fire department, we did not have 911 dispatch. All the calls went to the village. We had a 24/7 dispatcher right in the building across the street, which was nice because as we came rolling in to go on calls, she'd have the overhead doors open for us. The village had their own police department. There were some issues in that, and they ended up going to county. They had John Shanning on first shift, and the county covered second and third. So I was around with that, and then later on, the village ended up contracting with the town for police services.
Excellent. So I'm going to now move on to a couple of different topics.
Okay.
I'd like your opinion on them. And one of them you've just highlighted a minute ago, but what are your thoughts about fire and EMS services? Because it's my understanding the village has their own fire EMS. The town has our own fire EMS. So what are your thoughts around that? I know you know it intimately.
When I was on the board, Mr. Delgrave, who was the county executive at the time, was trying to have countywide EMS. I attended several meetings on that. After that, they had the chiefs meet, and now I don't believe anything has happened since then. Love to have a fire district. Don't know if it will work. The village is a municipal department. Tishkin is a private company. Rochester is a private company, but I believe Rochester might be being taken over by the village. I'm not sure. I would love to see having a fire district.
What is a fire district, Doug? Do you know?
You would share equipment. You know, you wouldn't duplicate equipment. Example is right now, Waterford has 3 ambulances. Rochester has at least 2, and I believe Tishkin has 2 or 3. Do we need that many ambulances in this small area? Probably not. You know, grass rigs. Tish can have a grass rig. Waterford doesn't need one. Waterford can have a pumper, and maybe Tish can have a pumper tanker. You know, start combining services. You know, the days of the volunteer are sort of going away. You know, I remember if we had a fire call, we would fully man 3 fire trucks out of that station. Now with the full-time people, you man 1 truck, which number one is you have to worry, you know, get more help from other areas. The advantage, and it goes back to when I first joined the department in '73, is we had what was called automatic response. Anytime there was a structure fire in any of the 3 areas, all 3 departments responded. So a lot of times, you know, if there was a fire up in Tishkin, Waterford might be first. Who cares who gets there first? We all work together. And that's what they need to do. So I would think that might be one of the ways, you know, we'd have to sit down. Obviously, Tishkin owns their own equipment. How that would work, I don't know. We were starting to work at that a little bit, like I said, with John Delgrave. It fell by the wayside. I think there's an opportunity to bring that back because unfortunately, we can't afford to keep buying equipment for everybody. And you know, Tishkin does a great job. I commend them. But they have part-time people they have to pay, and it's getting harder and harder because, you know, when I went to that, there was Union Grove and I think Kansasville or someplace, I'm not sure, the municipalities. Guy worked there, and this department is going to pay him $2 more an hour. So he goes trucking over there. So it's hard to get people and to keep them. So we need to look at that.
Very good, thank you. Now I'm going to move on to another topic.
Okay.
And that is property tax assessments. So
Yes.
in the last time, it's my understanding, the last time we've had a townwide property tax assessment was in 2008.
Okay, I was gonna say 7 or 8, yes.
Yes, in 2008, and we have also, I think this week, the board did approve an RFP
Yes, they
for a firm to be hired
Yes.
to do another town-wide property tax assessment. And doing some research on the topic and talking with the Department of Revenue, it's recommended that you look at this on a 5-year
Yes.
interval,
Yes.
because property values change over time. And I wanted your thoughts on our current situation and how you see, how do you think we should be addressing property tax assessments in the future?
Well, a 5-year plan is great. Yes, I'm probably one of them that benefits because I've lived here a long time. The house I'm in right now, I've been in since '77, and actually I bought it from my parents, so I grew up at that house. So yeah, am I benefiting right now? Yes. Is it fair? No. We need to address it, I think, and I understand that's the way the board directed the town assessor at the time to do it. You know, as long as you're under a certain rate, you don't have to reassess. You know, I hear in the village people are complaining, we get reassessed every year. Well, I don't agree with that, but I agree with like every 5 years. And I'll use, you know, a neighbor's house sells for $1 million, and you look at the assessment for my house, and it sure isn't anywhere near that. Of course, I look at their house, and there's 3-story, and my house was built in 1955. So there's a lot of, but it needs to be fair across the board. We had one come into the Board of Adjustments, I think it was 2 years ago when I was there, and he said, I just bought my house and I paid whatever it was. You know, so my assessment went up to that price because that's what I paid. My neighbor has the exact same house, and theirs is $100,000 less. You can't blame them. Granted, you paid for it, that's what you were willing to pay, but your neighbor's house, why is it so much cheaper? Were some of the homes, especially as you know on the waterway, inflated? Most certainly. I think you will see that bubble break a little bit, but we do need to assess it so it's equal across the thing. It'll help with our taxes. You know, putting on my other hat as being on the high school will help with the high school tax too.
Okay, very good. Thank you. What are your thoughts around public input at the town board meetings?
Probably something you don't know is when I first got on the board, I copy and pasted an email to the town chair at that time, saying what we do at the high school. And I understand it's a meeting in public, it's not a public meeting. You take the input and that's it, and I'll go back to when I was on the grade school because we had some lawyers talk to us. You don't really engage in it. Thank you for your input. If it's something, we'll put it on next month's agenda. And I learned all about not being on the agendas the hard way. So I sent him his email, and his note from me back to me was, why would I want to listen to people complain? Part of our job. Now when we got a new chair, she did institute it. She sort of said it was her idea. Well, I can go back in the emails. It was actually my idea 8 months earlier. I think you need public input. I don't know why our chair now doesn't. There again, the former chair that he was under for years didn't do it. When I checked with the clerks, I believe it was either 2008 or 9 is when public comments went away. You know, we have them at the grade school, we have them at the high school. The public needs to be heard. And that's, you know, like I had said, I hate the word transparency, but that's what you need. Number one, what are we doing? 2, what do the people want to be heard? Whether they're right or wrong, and you know, at the school. Thank you for your input. If it's something that we have to discuss at the next meeting, then we put it on the agenda. They just want to get their opinions out there. And right now, we're not doing it. And there again, transparency. And I'll use, if we got in a little trouble with the border agreement where we didn't post our meetings, even though we didn't have a quorum. We only had 2 board members there. Well, there was some, you know, and I don't know what all the legal stuff is. Well, all of a sudden, you know, I hear, well, we have 2 town supervisors meeting with the police chief. One of them is, granted, has his other cap on as chairman of WWMD, but you are both supervisors. Why not just post, hey, we're going to be talking to him. It doesn't hurt. You know, like yesterday, it was brought up that some of the police committee might be there. So the town clerk put on their possible notice of quorum. That way people are informed. If you want to come and listen to us, we have nothing to hide. You know, and that's kind of the thing. well, they're meeting and they don't have their information out there. What are they trying to hide? No. The more people know, the better it is for everybody in the town.
So as I'm listening to you describe this though, and I'm thinking back to some history on this,
Okay.
I think it sounds to me like you're talking about wanting transparency, but it seems that also maybe process might be helpful, because I think at times you mentioned that people might not know that they needed to make notice, and so.
You know, like I said, obviously, you know, everybody knows that, yes, we did get an issue to go into the court, and that was resolved. Yes, it cost the town $3,000, which at the time I was off the board, so I didn't know it was going to cost that. I was very willing to go. In fact, one town supervisor hired a lawyer, one sent a letter and saying, plead not guilty. I said, it's a drive-through scene. I could drive there and plead not guilty myself. So I would have had no problem going by myself. If I'd known it was going to cost $3,000, I would have said something. I didn't know. Did I learn some things? Yes. 3 different lawyers. I got 3 different answers.
Mm-hmm.
The one I took most was Wisconsin Towns Association, which told me when you made a motion to do away with the what the ordinance says, we can discuss. Yes. Where I screwed up is I should have made a motion to have it on the next meeting agenda. I didn't. Right away we voted on it, and that's where I violated the open meetings laws. It has to be on the agenda. The other thing, which is kind of funny, is everybody before the election, we need to change the town ordinance that has the chairperson in charge of the agenda. Right now, 2 board members can call for a special meeting, but the town chair still is in control of the agenda. And everybody thought it was great. That needs to be revisited. It's 10 months later. It hasn't been.
Very good. Yeah, thank you. And I think you've already, you know, on the topic of town growth, you shared that you really feel that we need to put a strategic plan in place. Am I correct in assuming you also think that the community should weigh in on their thoughts about where the future of the town should go as well?
Yes, yes. You know, I've talked to some people, you know, we need to get something going into town, you know, people that have moved in, you know, in the last 20 years. Nothing in town's changed in the last 20 years. You're right, it hasn't. A lot of town residents say, we like it the way it is, that's why we moved here. You know, and there's a difference between the town, which is more rural, and the village, who is, you know, and I'll use the Graves. The homes are right next to each other there in Trailside subdivision. That's what the people like. And that's where we need to have some open comments. What, you know, like I said, 5, 10, 15 years, what do the people want in the town? I'm not going to say, oh, I think we need to get more developers in here, because I don't know. What do they want? They're the ones who moved out here. You know, they might like it the way it is. And that was one of the reasons why I brought up the industrial park. It'd be a great way to start bringing some extra money in.
Very good, thank you. So, and wrapping up,
Okay.
are there any additional thoughts that we should, that we haven't covered, some areas we haven't covered, or things that you would like people to consider when thinking about your candidacy to serve as a supervisor again on the town board?
Probably something that not many people touch on is it's more work than what people think. The advantage to being retired, and I'll admit, the last time when I was on the board, I still was working part-time for Generac. And my wife just brought it up again today. Does anybody realize how much time it actually takes? And being retired, I have the time. When you have a full-time job, obviously your full-time job, because that's what your family is relying on, comes before being on the town. And while, you know, I commend the people who do it, you know, that was being like on the fire department for years. It takes away from your family then. And, you know, you could do it in just, you know, I had one person say, well, you just go down there once a month, that's it. Well, not if you're doing your due diligence. You know, I used to drive around and look at the pier permits and see where it was in that, as an example. You have to follow up on stuff. Or like I had brought up, when people applied for the committee. Well, I think they're all great people. I don't know who else applied. Supervisors didn't know who else applied. You need to follow up on this stuff, and it doesn't seem to be done.
Very good. Oh, thank you. You know, Doug, thank you. You've been very insightful, and we appreciate the information you shared with our voters in Waterford, and we appreciate your time today. And we look forward to having you attend the forum, which will be coming up on January 28th, where you'll have a chance to see all of the candidates together on a panel. thank you again for your time, and we're now concluded. We have interviewed everyone, so we hope this information that we've shared with you throughout these interviews has been very useful and will help you reach some ideas around the candidates and their thoughts and priorities about the town of Waterford when it comes to our next election.